Every year I get older, weirder, and way more delusional, and my birthday is next week, so the simulation that is my life is due an expansion pack. In fact, call me EA, because much like the capitalist dystopia they turned The Sims into, I am also going to install my life improvements in multiple small bites of content rather than one comprehensive and satisfying DLC. Because I am a person, not a fucking video game company. EA, you suck. Anyways, this video is sponsored by... Just kidding. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mia and I chat shit while I make shit. So if you like making things or just background noise while you do your dishes, hit subscribe. And if you end up liking this video, give it a like, hype, comment for engagement. It really helps the channel, so I appreciate it. Thank you. As a quick side note, I got my channel avatars made. Guys, look how perfect these are. I'll put all the details of the artist. It's Devon Smith. I'll put everything in the description box, but moment of appreciation because I love them. Anyways, okay, back to the video. This video is not about The Sims, yeah, sorry for the quick detour. It is about how I'm planning to change my life over the next 12 months and potentially, maybe, hopefully, help you to do the same. I've created a whole action plan with monthly breakdowns and free templates that you can use to recreate this challenge yourself at home. But first, what are we doing? Listen, I know that New Year is the time for dramatic change. All the how to become unrecognizable and change your life in 30 days videos are popping off. And I love that. Okay, if I could do that and have it create a long-lasting impact on my life, best believe I would. However, I have suffered myself for almost 27 years at this point, and so this video is not that. This video is a slow and steady wins the race approach, a year-long life improvement project that prioritizes the practical, the sustainable, and the actually feels good internally over the dramatic aesthetic transformation. This project factors in things like the unrelenting ADHD demons plaguing my brain and the fickle mistress that is my motivation levels. But in more literal terms, it's a series of pre-planned life improvement experiments over the course of the next 12 months, tailored to fit my specific life goals. So why monthly experiments? We can make a drinking game out of how many times I'm going to say ADHD in this video, apologies in advance, but also I'm fighting for my life, so it kind of is what it is. So the idea of monthly experiments, basically I think a lot, ineffectively, but you know, still thoughts, and goal setting and tracking is something that I have pondered extensively because on paper, I am a goal girly. I love vision boards, I love my planner, I love moving forwards in my life, and yet I cannot set and track goals. I'll have vague directions, loose life plans I plod along towards, but specific goal setting and monitoring is just not my strong suit. Plus, even if I set a goal, a lot of the time I'm essentially just guessing at what I should want or what I should do, and then even if I hit it, it's just like, cool, I guess this is success, and that's okay. It's hardly ruining my life. I mean, I don't think it is. I guess there could be a timeline where type Amy is already retired and eating bonbons in her lake house, but I've just wondered if maybe there's an alternative way, and maybe that way is to decenter linear goals and what our preconceived notion of success looks like in favor of a more experimental approach. Enter the experimental mindset. Now, bear with me here, I promise it's relevant, but one of the benefits of keeping a media journal is that it's really easy to pinpoint direct sources of inspiration, even if they've been brewing subconsciously for a few months. There are many videos and articles and books that inspired this project, and I'll mention them as they become relevant, but the concept of the experimental mindset was 100% adopted from the video Fix Your Destructive Mindset in 15 Minutes on Big Think. Obviously, go watch that video, it's linked in the description, as is the written version over on their Substack, because personally, if I'm learning, I prefer reading, but that's just me. But anyways, a brief top line is it talks about how there are 3 subconscious mindsets that hold us back: cynicism, perfectionism, and escapism. And we can plot each of these mindsets on a grid against 2 characteristics: ambition and curiosity. Escapism is high curiosity but low ambition, whereas perfectionism is high ambition but low curiosity, and cynicism is just low all-round negative vibes. And these mindsets are fluid, by the way, they can all be changed. The sweet spot, however, is the mindset that has high ambition and high curiosity, the experimental mindset. To quote, in an experimental mindset, you're open to uncertainty. You see it as an opportunity to explore, to grow, and to learn. When you have an experimental mindset, instead of chasing those linear goals that give you the illusion of certainty, you're open to designing experiments. Having an experimental mindset means seeing failures as data points that you can learn from. It means being open to making mistakes because you know you're going to learn from them. It means embracing the fact that you might not have a plan, that you don't know what's coming, and this is great. It means you can design your life in a way that is conscious and connected. Now, for me personally, I've had to reframe my mindset a lot as an adult because of the aforementioned ADHD demons. I remember a tweet or something that made the rounds a few years ago that's basically like, unmedicated ADHD is just a pendulum swing between perfectionism and rampant chaos. And I could not agree with anything more. So the experimentation mindset, even before I had a name for it, is something I've really tried to adopt in my life because being too rigid with my thinking was ultimately incompatible with my brain, and it just made me sad. But since learning about the concept of the experimental mindset, I really want to lean into it for 2026 and see how it goes. Okay, so we are going to talk more about how to cultivate an experimental mindset later in this video when we get to setting our experiments. But for now, just put a pin in this and remember that the take home is that we are setting experiments to uncover how we want to live our best life rather than setting rigid goals based off predictions of what that best life would be. Step 1, explore your curiosity, aka mind map. So my first step was actually to create a mind map with the goal of exploring my motivations, goals, influences, all that jazz. Basically an exercise to think on paper and figure out what areas of my life I really wanted to improve. I made a point to do this before looking at vision board inspiration or anything like that, just so that these points were internally driven. And fun fact, I'm using an accordion insert of my new Commonplace journal for this. Something that really helped me with this step was not focusing too much on specific things and more the intention behind them. So like, for example, buying a house. I really want to buy a house, that's a goal of mine. But if we drill into that, it's more that I want the perceived security of having a house, the financial benefit of not throwing money away on rent, and honestly, the creative project of having a house I own to decorate. Obviously, not saying that's a bad goal, but really that my ultimate goal is financial security, and owning a house is just an idea I have of what that looks like. So I put the goal as financial security with buying a house as an idea. A few other things that came up for me were digital hygiene, creative hobbies, writing, cognition, financial security, career purpose. Side note, I've been reading Moral Ambition and I haven't finished it, by the way, so grain of salt for this, but so far it's about how we dedicate so much of our time to work, 80,000 hours across our lifetimes from memory, and how if you were to dedicate your career in that time to a worthy cause like climate change, you could have a bigger impact than you probably feel like you could. And it's definitely been making me consider my impact and the best use of my skills towards causes I care about. You know, unfortunately, it's also made me realize, like, do I have any skills? I don't know. But anyways, I'm just shouting the book out because A, book recommendation, but B, it did also influence this 2026 challenge in terms of being a motivating force for some of the career direction and motivation that I have. Anyways, moving on. Step 2, create visual reminders, aka vision boarding. Now, once I identified my target areas, I went on to create a vision board based off that mind map. Visualization is a really powerful tool. You've probably heard this a million times, but it is true. I watched a great video recently that was about the neuroscience of visualization, and that is linked below, but that was how to make a vision board that actually works in 2026 by Dr. Izzy Seeley. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Again, go watch it. There's a ton of useful information in there, but one of the really interesting things that she shared was about our brain's value tagging system in the dumbest reiteration possible, because I am not a science girly. Basically, our brains are able to process an insane amount of information, about 11 million pieces of information per second, but our conscious mind can only handle about 50. So to stop us from going literally insane, our subconscious filters things out and tries to give us only the information that we need. Part of this process is called value tagging, which is where our brain recognizes information as important based off its emotional significance or relevance to our goals. Dr. Izzy gave the example of her being pregnant and suddenly seeing babies everywhere, but all I could think of was this game that my coworker and I play when we walk home. Let's call it Summon the Bald Men. It is incredibly dumb, and no hate to the bald men, okay? No tea, no shade. It's just one day we realized as we're walking home that we work with a lot of bald men, just, you know, just is what it is. And we're walking home and we were like, man, there are people everywhere. But like, there are no bald men, how weird. And then we said that and there were bald men everywhere. And it's really funny because now every time we walk back, at some point we'll be like, where are the bald men? And suddenly droves of bald men will just start exiting their offices. It is comical because it literally works like magic every time. Now, in reality, I work in finance, okay? The bald men were always there. But following this logic, our game just signals to my brain, hey, bald men are important right now. So information you receive about them should be forwarded to my conscious mind. I feel we've got a bit off track. So for vision boards, you want them to be in places you will regularly see them. So I've got 3 currently. One is in my weekly planner's opening page, one is next to my desk, and one is as my phone screen. And this one is great because it makes me feel kind of guilty if I'm looking at my phone for no reason. The take home for this section is that creating vision boards is a great way to tap into our brain's value tagging system by sending our brain regular visual reminders of what goals are important to us and therefore what information should be elevated to conscious processing, because we might be missing opportunities simply because our subconscious is not registering them as important. And by the end of these 2 exercises, I had a really good idea of what areas in my life I wanted to focus on for 2026, and now we can move on to stage 2, setting the experiment. But first, let's take it back to Anne Lawler-Kump and Big Think for a minute and talk about how to cultivate an experimental mindset. Now, there's a simple 4-step framework that Anne Law shares for creating an experimental mindset that's based off the scientific approach. Step 1, observe your current situation. Step 2, ask a research question. Step 3, design a tiny experiment. And step 4, analyze results and decide on next steps. When you're creating your experiments, something she suggests is to set a commitment pact, which for me is basically this video, this whole thing. So with commitment pacts, you basically say to yourself, I will do this thing for this specific duration, and you do it. The idea is to choose small, purposeful experiments, stick it out for the pre-agreed experiment timeframe, and assess from there. To quote, a pact is actionable. This is something you need to be able to do right now. You don't need extra resources. You don't need help from other people. This is something you can try straight away. It doesn't have to be something crazy, and more importantly, it doesn't have to stick. The distinction between habits versus experiments is something that drew me to this a lot. So a habit, as she explains it, is something that you know is good and you want to do indefinitely. Whereas with an experiment, you don't know if it will work for you. And that's okay. The point is to find out. Let's move on to setting my monthly experiments and my Notion setup. With all of this in mind, I decided to set myself a series of small experiments to complete throughout 2026, each focusing on different categories of my life I've identified for improvement. For this, I created a Notion template with 2 sections. Section 1 is a quarterly month-to-month view, so there's a dedicated page for each month of 2026 where I can track whatever experiments I'm doing with some brief notes about them as I go. I separated this quarterly because while most of my experiments I reckon will be a month or less, some might span longer, so it's an easy way to track those too. And then section 2 is a big brain dump of experiment ideas. The idea being that I can drag and drop experiments into each month as I decide to do them and go in and add more if I feel inspired by new things throughout the year. While I do have some of these pre-assigned as of right now, other than January's experiments, this is completely open to change because again, the whole point of this is that there isn't a predetermined destination and that this can and will change with me. Personally, I love Notion because it also works as a bit of a resource bank where that's applicable. So for example, with my B-road algorithm experiment, I've got a content bank within the experiment page for me to reference and have easy access to links and things like that. I tend to use digital planning tools more for big picture project overviews and resource management, but for my day-to-day tracking, I prefer paper. So my Notion setup doesn't have habit trackers or anything like that, but my Filofax planner does. Okay, so what are some of the experiments I'm planning to try? Again, this is not the be-all end-all, but some of the things on my list are try lat tricking for 15 minutes every day. There's some really interesting research about the cognitive benefits of crafting, and this is already a hobby that I have. I've already got all the supplies, so I want to find out if setting time aside to do it more regularly will actually make me feel any better. Being my own algorithm. Basically, setting time aside to curate everything I can watch in a week and try to avoid the infinite scroll trap. It sounds good on paper, and I've seen a few videos about it that make me go, oh, that's a bit of me. But would it work in reality? Would it be too time consuming? That's what we're trying to find out. Trying to keep a Commonplace journal for 3 months. If you've watched my 2025 journal ecosystem video, you will know that I tried and failed to keep a Commonplace journal in the past. But Listen, I feel like things are a bit different now, okay? Because I have been using my media journal and just writing in my journals in general, and I just have this urge to commonplace and store quotes and random bits of knowledge in a set area. So I want to try this again, going analog with my media, i.e. CDs and physical books. Again, this is one that might end up being inconvenient and not working, but it might also be great. And that's the point. We're just trying these things out to see. And then a few others were just like trying a 30-minute yoga video every day and not going on my phone for the first hour or two of my day, and so on and so forth. So that's my plan. I'm so excited about this, and I feel like the more relaxed approach to goal setting and honestly the novelty of trying new things all the time might work super well for my brain. To be clear though, I don't know, and that's kind of the point. If it fails, well, that's still an outcome. Now, I don't want to be too controversial here because I know we all dream of reaching our golden years and regaling our nursing home staff with tales of our 12-hour YouTube binges, as is our god, I mean Mark Zuckerberg, given right. However, when the screen-induced dementia catches up to us at 55, do we want to tell people about the heyday of Tumblr, the chokehold Fleabag and the hot priest had on us, or maybe even about our favourite book? Or do we want to tell them about the AI slop soulless tech bros spoon-fed our dopamine receptors? Look, I'm not gonna lie to you, this is gonna seem off topic for a minute, but just deal with it. It's actually incredibly on topic. Don't rush the process. So recently, I was having a conversation with my boyfriend about this channel's purpose. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a YouTube channel, not War and Peace. The purpose is to have a giggle and hopefully pay my rent. But outside of that, I've been trying to figure out why I've gathered you all here. And it's clearly to talk about our Lord and Savior, ChatGPT. Wait, fuck, they got to be two. What I settled on was broken into 3 key points. 1, a belief that we all deserve a mentally fulfilling life that isn't stolen by the digital world, aka tech companies, and I mean late stage capitalism, but honestly, someone else is gonna have to tackle that one. 2, the goal of the content I create is to help people explore their creativity and hobbies to find that mental fulfillment. And 3, as part of that goal, I want to help people cut through the noise of the modern world and survive the Truman Show as best we can. Okay, so I know the ADHD demons in your brain are like, girl, this is not what I clicked for. Here's a Fleabag meme, you feral rat, and also the point. I explained these loose ideas to my boyfriend, and his immediate reaction was, oh, so your thing is like anti-tech, tech is evil? And my response to him is also kind of the crux of this video. I'm not anti-tech at all. I am pro-tech, being a tool we use to access the things we love. If people get joy out of gaming, or they feel creatively inspired watching YouTube videos, I love that. I'm here for that. What I'm anti is the capitalist hellscape where tech companies have invested billions into weaponizing our brains against us to keep us hooked on their products. I want technology, and in today's particular case content, to be something we choose to engage with and enjoy, rather than a constant stream being jettisoned into our veins via a meta IV drip. I say this to say, this video is not to shame you for watching content or to encourage you to become a monk living a life of complete abstinence. It's more to encourage you to watch content because you like it, because you want to, because it makes you feel good in some way, not because you've been trapped in the dingy halls of a YouTube rabbit hole for the past 7 hours, or because your attention span has been so intentionally decimated that you can't bear a single moment of silence. I want it to be your choice rather than a compulsion you are acting out under the control of tech companies. So how do we get there? To be clear, I am simply a crow girly with a microphone. I don't have the answers. What I do have is an experiment I've been trying this month with the aim of breaking free of algorithmic shackles. And hopefully by the end of that experiment, we'll have learned something useful. If you're a regular to my channel, you might already know that in 2026, we are not setting goals, we are setting experiments. Because experiments can fail, that's part of the process. It's all data that we're collecting. It's gentle. More information on that can be found in this video if you're interested. So, throughout late December and January, I've been experimenting with being my own algorithm as a way of improving my digital hygiene. We'll go into more depth about that in just a sec, but essentially for me, what this has meant is pre-curating a content bank to work through throughout the month and only watching videos from that. Essentially, dodging the infinite scroll trap. Okay, so why do you want to be your own algorithm? For me, there are 2 key elements to this. 1, choice versus control, which we touched on earlier, and 2, the negative impacts of non-stop content consumption. At the end of the day, love isn't what makes the world go round, it's money. And history, and not even like history book history, recent within living memory history, shows that big companies will repeatedly and knowingly put safety at risk to turn a profit. Boeing and Teflon being the two that immediately come to mind for me. We live in the attention economy. I'm sure you've heard that a million times, but unfortunately for our mental health and general well-being, understanding that does in fact matter. So let's talk about it. For this next section, again, I am simply a crow girly with a microphone and you should not listen to me. So I'm going to be pulling from the United Nations Economist Network paper on attention economy, which will be linked down below. Give it a read, it's only 13 pages and it's actually really interesting. The attention economy concept is not a new one and was first coined in the late 1960s by Herbert A. Simon, characterizing the problem of information overload as an economic one. Naturally though, the internet has speedrun this. If we think of it as supply and demand, we now have so much content, which is the supply, that attention is the limiting factor for demand. Basically, the total available attention is limited by the number of people with access to information, the fixed number of hours in a day, and conflicting demands on our time and attention. You know how Netflix has famously claimed that their competitor was sleep? Well, in this framing, they are not wrong. It does take 8 hours of prime attention away. So what do companies do about this? Well, to quote that paper, to address the scarcity of people's attention, these technologies have been increasingly aimed at strategic capture of private attention, aided by systematic collection and analysis of personal data, which has become a very profitable business model. So not only is our data sold to whoever for murky purposes, yay, it's also used to build algorithms that are tailor-made to tap into our brains with the purpose of keeping us hooked. Another quote, this degrades the experience, leading to maximizing the time users spend on a platform at the expense of an individual's well-being and even affecting individuals' intentions. Indeed, to maximize profits, algorithms are programmed to increase engagement by maximizing virality of the content, which often promotes highly incendiary, controversial, or polarizing content to drive interactions. This increases exposure to unhealthy content, often based on mis or false information, significantly impairing conscious decision-making, and risks creating addiction, desensitization, and radicalization. They did not write those sentences to be easy to quote. Jesus Christ. Now, we don't really have time to deep dive into all the specific tricks that are used to keep you engaged, but if you are interested, just Google the keywords gambling, dopamine, and social media. However, I'll finish this section with another quote from the United Nations paper. Intention is being impaired and eroded as most users of digital platforms are unaware of the algorithms working in the background that increasingly disempower them to act in their own best interest. Okay, hopefully we now get why we want to move away from the autoplay algorithm. Let's get on to how. Also, this is pretty awkward, but I've pretty much finished this script and there is no good place to put my intro because I forgot to script it in. So I know we're kind of knee deep in the passenger seat of this video, but hi friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Mia and I chat shit while I make shit. So if you like making things or just background noise where you do your dishes, hit subscribe. And if you like this video, give it a like, a hype, comment for engagement. It really helps the channel and I appreciate it, so thank you. So the idea for this experiment solely came from this video by Lilla Bjorn Stationery. It will of course be linked in the description box below, go check it out. Essentially, Lilla shared how she uses a pocket notebook to pre-curate all her content, from shows to short form to YouTube videos, so that what she watches is driven by her own curiosity. And I loved her system, I was super inspired, but I immediately knew that replicating it wouldn't work for my brain. So her video was a brilliant concept and starting point for me to build my own experiment off. The experiment parameters. The start date, 21st of December, runtime 2 weeks. I actually just kept it rolling, so we're about 3 weeks in as of filming. And the experiment actions are that I pre-curate a bulk lot of content based off whatever topics I'm interested in, and I can only watch YouTube videos from that list. My pre-curated content lives in a digital content bank on Notion. This lets me store hyperlinks for one, but also lets me categorize content to see the spread of what I'm interested in. There are also 2 tick boxes, one for if I watch watch something, and the second is for if I wrote about it in my media journal. There's no requirement to journal about things, by the way. It's more just a good way to track what videos I really responded to. I chose Notion because I just use it for all my digital planning anyway, so it slots this experiment into my life really easily. But I also chose Notion because I watch like 90% of content on my laptop, so putting my content bank easily accessible right there where I use it just makes me more likely to like actually use it. I only use this method for YouTube videos. This is actually just because I don't watch that much short form content anyway, which sounds like cope. I literally had to go into my screen time settings and like fact check myself there, but it's been a very intentional process. I don't have a personal Instagram account. I haven't for like a year or two, and even the account that I have for my content, I don't use that account really. It's just got like auto scheduled stuff that goes up, so I deleted the Instagram app off my phone. I'm a Gen Z, so I don't use Facebook outside of Facebook Messenger, so that's another app that I deleted. Technically, my biggest audience is still TikTok, and I do have that one on my phone because it's shit on desktop, to be honest. But I only started using TikTok when I started creating content for it, so whenever I'm not posting, I really don't feel a big pull to check it. All this to say, the area I needed to work on being intentional with my content consumption was mostly YouTube, so I didn't want to clutter up my content bank with additional stuff. And then I set myself some, I guess, research questions. My 3 questions were: 1, exploring my connection to content consumption, whether I feel more inspired doing this. 2, is this too much work to realistically do ongoingly? 3, does it impact my free time and my focus levels? So now you know kind of what this experiment is, let's get on to how it went. Okay, so as I went through this experiment, I actually noted down my thoughts in a Notion page, so I'm just going to read them to you as is. A curated algorithm is great for cutting down on time wasted deciding on things, for example, during the workday or when I'm doing chores, but it doesn't completely stop me from scrolling, even if I'm not actually watching. I deleted YouTube from my phone because that's where I was falling down the rabbit hole the most. Weirdly enough, I'm actually finding myself watching content less, even though I have videos ready to go. Often I find myself like opening YouTube out of distraction, an urge for a quick dopamine hit, and then I remember I can't like scroll or watch anything, and I leave over actually dipping into my content bank. I am unsure how I feel. It's definitely good for cutting down on wasted content time, but I've not got through as much of the content I wanted to watch, but maybe that's actually a good thing. To be fair, I've actually also been really busy. So it turns out the algorithm is actually really fucking good at its job. Me, somewhat less. It's definitely been funny to actually watch some of my pre-selected things and like not enjoy them. It's also good though, where I've not been watching just endless background noise. I'm definitely more intentional about what I am watching, and I'm also branching out into new creators and formats that I'm really enjoying. Had a full day of filming and crafting yesterday, also had a fantastic content day. My media journal got like 10 new pages. But what's funny about that is I only watched like 3 to 5 videos across the whole day. Overall, I really enjoyed this experiment, especially towards the end where I was getting more into the habit of using my content bank and just watching less overall. I definitely do think that this is a great way to cut down on just like rampant binge watching, because like I noted during the experiment, I'm shockingly not as good as YouTube's algorithm at finding content that hooks me and makes me want to spend all day watching a screen. Like even the content I loved and was writing about like crazy, I would watch it and then be like, okay, so time for some music, time for me to get on with my life. It's also a great way to get what you want out of content. You know that feeling when you load YouTube to search for a tutorial or something and you just get sucked into the wormhole and suddenly 3 hours have passed and you're watching a new girl compilation? Yeah, that doesn't really happen when you're using a content bank. I mean, unless you want it to, I guess. I made sure to also include entertainment in my content bank, like fun videos I knew would be good background noise while I worked, or videos from people I subscribe to and just like really enjoy and think are really funny. And I also included content for learning more about certain things. So when I wanted entertainment, I watched a video that was tagged as entertainment, maybe even 2, and then I stopped. And when I wanted to learn something, I watched a video about learning and then I stopped. Now, I'll be honest, it wasn't anything crazy life-changing, and I think it's also something that's worked well for me now because I've used it in conjunction with other things that I've been doing for my digital hygiene. But I had some research questions, so let's answer them. Exploring my connection to content consumption, do I feel more inspired doing this? Yes, actually, I 100% do. Again though, that's with using this with another tool, which is my media journal. Refining and slowing down my content consumption has given me literally more time to pause and write in my media journal. And you guys know how rapidly obsessed I am with that thing. Is this too much work realistically to do ongoingly though? No, not at all. That was really my main concern going into this, but it didn't take long to set up, and I've also been keeping tabs of videos that prick my interest for February's content bank. Does it impact my free time and focus levels? Girl, I don't know how I thought I was going to be able to measure this. My focus levels have been really good recently, I will say, and to be fair, that probably can be attested to reduced scrolling time, so sure, I'll say this was a yes, it positively impacted it, but I don't know why I put that one, guys, sorry. The real test though is, am I going to keep this experiment going? And the answer is yes. I'm actually moving this to a quarterly experiment, so I'm going to keep it going until March and we can reevaluate. This is a free, easy, and for me, successful little experiment that you could try if you were trying to be more mindful about digital hygiene and content consumption in 2026. That being said, there was a really interesting podcast episode by Cal Newport called The Real Reason You Can't Put Your Phone Down and What to Do About It. I'll link it below, but basically, during the first segments of the podcast, he explains some of the neuroscience behind why we're all so fucking glued to our phones. And then he goes on to explain why certain well-meaning and even logical advice might not work when viewed through that lens. So I do want to be mindful of the fact that this is something that's worked really well for me now, but it might have been a different story 2 years ago. And if you do want to try this yourself and you find that it doesn't work, that's okay. Maybe it's just not for you, or maybe it's just not for you right now, and you might need additional tools or systems in place before it clicks. But anyways, this is my first experiment of the year, and it was a raging success. So I hope this was useful in some way, and thanks for hanging out with me. Okay, bye. What do a rabid crow girlie and a 17th century philosopher have in common? A Commonplace book. That is a disgustingly apt sentence. However, the words did originate from my brain, and so, though it pains me, I must put them out there for my rightful public condemnation. I'm sorry. If you're unfamiliar with the term Commonplace book, we'll be diving more into what they are and why, if you watch my channel, you'll probably want to keep one yourself. But as a brief overview, Commonplace books are essentially a curated encyclopedia of your own interests. They're a space for you to collect little snippets of curiosity, things you learn, quotes you love, really just whatever captures your interest. And as a thinking, feeling, writing girly, you would think they would be right up my alley. That is certainly what I thought after coming across a few YouTube videos on them a year back. Unfortunately, as is often the case, I was wrong. I tried commonplacing a year ago and proved that theory solidly false. I think I used my Commonplace book twice, and yet here we are in a video to conclusively prove whether I live and learn or live and I'm doomed to constantly repeat my own mistakes, because this year I'm trying commonplacing again. Hi friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Mia and I chat shit while I make shit. So if you like making things or just background noise while you do your dishes, hit subscribe. And if you end up liking this video, give it a like, hype, comment for engagement. It really helps the channel and I appreciate it, so thank you. Okay, so what is a commonplace book? In a sentence, Commonplace books are a personal encyclopedia of your interests. I know, we said that already, we're getting more into it. They've been around for centuries, it's not a new trend, but there has been a resurgence of social media interest in them recently. So a Commonplace book is kind of a brain dump journal, except rather than dumping your own intrinsic thoughts, you're dumping everything that sparks your attention from the world around you. And that can be anything. That can be quotes, interesting facts, recipes, song lyrics, literally anything anything that you want to add to your personal encyclopedia and store for later. There's a quote I liked from Bookbinders Design's blog on Commonplacing, which is, think of it as the difference between telling your own story and collecting the best lines from everyone else's. Commonplacing is a lot less structured than typical journaling. Obviously, you can flex it to fit your needs, but typically my Commonplace journal is for very brief updates. Like, I'm hearing something interesting, I'm jotting it down as I come across it, maybe with a little brief thought about it. The whole process usually takes like 2 minutes or less. Whereas my media journal is a space where I sit down, I review, I write really long form entries. They have very different purposes. So, Commonplace books are actually an incredibly simple premise, and you don't need anything other than a notebook and pen. In fact, I would actively discourage you from making it more complicated than that. At least to start with, because trying to make it pretty and overthinking it, I think is one of the reasons that I failed the first time. Like I said, last time I tried Commonplacing, I was a wee babe, unprepared and alone in this cold world. Entirely self-inflicted, of course. I could have, and probably should have, done more research past just a single video and vibes. Okay, why am I trying Commonplacing again? Hypothetically, how narcissistic is it to quote your own videos? I fear the answer to that, unfortunately, won't stop me. In my video on being my own algorithm, my closing thought was, if this doesn't work for you, that's okay. Maybe it's just not for you, or maybe it's just not for you right now. And you might need additional tools or systems in place before it clicks. And I said that because I believe it. Shit is always changing. We are always getting new information and trying new things. And so our foundation and our capacity for certain skills is also constantly changing. So failing at something once shouldn't mean that we abandon all hope. That's what the climate crisis is for. When I initially tried Commonplacing, I was in both my consistently inconsistent phase of journaling and my journaling as an artistic creative hobby phase. Neither of those are bad things, to be clear. I love my junk journals and I froth a sticker, but it just meant that the habit of sitting and writing things down, non-existent. And perhaps more importantly, the urge, the active desire to do so, it just was not there. I'm actually planning a video on this at some point, but there was a really simple thing that completely flicked the switch on written journaling for me last year, and that was focusing outwards. I'd always tried writing inwards about my feelings or my day-to-day life, but I'm English, okay? I don't want to sit there and write about my feelings. I'm too repressed for that, and it just didn't really interest me. So switching to more outward-facing journals like my beloved media journal really and truly unlocked a feral, obsessive love of writing in me. And don't get me wrong, is facing outwards to understand inwards. I'm reflecting on my opinions and beliefs and those forbidden feelings as I'm writing about these external things. But I say this to say, by the end of 2025, the writing habit was in full swing. Being more attentive to the world around me, tick. The urge to collect and hoard my favorite bits of information, unlocked. And so, when I was setting my experiments for 2026, I figured I'd try Commonplacing again, and that I might now be in a place to succeed. How to keep a Commonplace journal. While it is ultimately up to you how you want to commonplace, there are a few established methods if you want some guidance on how to start. I mentioned the Lockean method earlier during the ad read that I know you totally didn't skip, which is the Zibaldone method. I actually didn't even realize I was using a method until researching for this video. So essentially the Zibaldone method is just collecting things without immediately categorizing them. So you can see this page has the root of a word, a quote about attention, some information about dopamine, and then a phrase I liked from my boyfriend's latest music project. There is no theme here whatsoever, clearly. To quote Bookbinder's design again, this type of notebook is called a Zibaldone, a Renaissance era hodgepodge book named after the Italian word for miscellany. Personally, I think this is probably the easiest way to start, which is why I'm focusing on it for this video, but if you like a little bit more structure, feel free to look into the Lockean method too. Now, while we're not collating information specific to a theme in this book, to make it easier to find information you store, you can add page numbers and an index. Personally, I fill this up retrospectively, but it just means that if I'm writing a script or if I'm in conversation and I want to recall something that's in this book, I can flip to the index and get a quick overview of my notes. At the moment, it's still early days, so I don't need this desperately, but I think it will come in handy later down the track. And that's it. As a how-to, it's really 3 steps. Step 1, add page numbers to your journal. Step 2, add an index so you can refer back to your notes easily. And step 3, go out into the world, find shit you love, collect random snippets of information that prick your interest. Now, I will show you my Commonplace book and some tips that I've picked up over the past month that have kept me using it. But first, I actually want to shine a spotlight on my audience because, like I said, commonplacing is personal to you. This is just guidelines that I've given you. So let's have a little peek at how other people use theirs. I asked my community about their experience with commonplacing, and I got some really thoughtful and some really hilarious answers. I will read a few out and I will link to the post in the description box if you want to read through some more. I started a Commonplace book because of a class I took in uni. I call it my personality book. I write down poetry, quotes from books, playlists, drawings, sticker collages, literally anything I feel fits my personality at the time. For example, my most recent entry was a Snoopy collage. Is also a good way for me to use up my special stationery lol. Comment 2. The name Commonplace never made sense to me and actually made the purpose of the journal seem really confusing and rigid to me. I just call mine a curiosity journal and I note down things I found interesting that I would ponder over but didn't have a place for before. There's rabbit holes for things that started as me wondering why things are the way they are, but also planning patterns for my crafts. There's no real structure to it besides an underlined title and a symbol in the corner for the topic, but that's it. Comment 3. I mainly use mine for logging when it comes to media. I copy poems I want to be able to reread, quotes from any sources I want to look back on, and at the end of the year I list my books read and TV shows/movies watched along with a quick rating. I track these things online too, but it's nice to have something physical that's much harder to lose access to. Honestly, I think people put too much pressure on commonplacing. It's literally just a receptacle for anything you want to keep on paper. You can put whatever you want in there. Comment 4. I've kept a Commonplace notebook before I knew what they were called. Certain information from website articles I read I want to remember. Beautiful quotes or poems I found on Pinterest that describe my inner world I want to remember. Exquisitely written words from books I read or unbelievable facts I find I want to remember. I love reading back on what I found interesting. It's a glimmer into my soul. And then this comment actually made me giggle, so Queen, thank you so much. So it says, I took up a Commonplace book because of the phone ban at my school. I can't get to my notes app, so now I gotta write all my fan fiction on paper like it's the 1900s. You guys are such good fun. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. I do appreciate it. Now let's talk my Commonplace book. I'm actually going to do this part live, so spoiler alert, my Commonplace journal has worked a lot better this time. We're only 1 month into my 3-month experiment, so I can't give you any full conclusions yet, but so far I'm loving it, I'm doing it regularly, and actively feeling the urge to actually turn to this little Commonplace book. And as well as the shifts that we've already talked about, I think a few key changes to my Commonplace book setup have also helped with that. So this is the milligram passport size refillable journal in burgundy. All the inserts inside, there's currently 3. I mean, it only actually holds up to 3, but they're also all from milligram. I bought this because it's small. If you've seen any of my journaling videos, you will know that I swear by a small journal, especially if you're trying to build a new habit up. So I knew that I wanted something like dinky size. I also knew that I wanted something refillable because through using my Filofax over the past year, I've just learned that refillable things mean that you can really like chop and change if you learn that something doesn't work for you, or even if you just finish your pages and you need to refresh. So I think for most of my journals moving forward, I'm gonna be using refillable systems just because it gives you a lot of like flexibility and customization options, and I love that. Okay, but back to my Commonplace journal. So the first section is where I actually keep all of my Commonplace notes. The middle section is actually my year of experiments accordion insert. The idea being that I could note things down about experiments as I go, but honestly, I actually might get a separate mini journal for that purely because there's only room for 3 inserts in these journals. And give me a sec. Okay, hi, I'm back. But basically, yeah, there's only room for 3 inserts in these journals, and I have already got 2 experiment themed ones, and we're in January, so we'll see. My third insert is still part of my Commonplace, but it's specifically for things that I want to look into a little bit further, whether that's to fact check things I hear or just to mark topics that I want to explore a little bit deeper. I figured having a separate section of my journal for that would just make it easier to refer back to when I find myself bored or with free time. And that is my setup so far. The benefits of commonplacing, a conclusion for now. In all honesty, I can't give you a fully formed conclusion on this experiment yet because we're only a third of the way through, but so far I am loving it. Here are some of the benefits I've observed across this month. I'm engaging more deeply with things I wouldn't have before. A specific example of this is actually Florence and the Machine's latest album, Everybody Scream. I love Florence and the Machine. She is quite easily my most listened to artist, but I wasn't blown away by the album. Outside of a few standouts which became instant favourites, the titular Everybody Scream and One of the Greats. However, as I was working the other day, I put the album on and I listened intently, in the back of my mind thinking, if I hear anything I resonate with, I have this handy little Commonplace journal just waiting for me. And I finished the album with 4 pages of song lyrics, a newfound love of it, and an entire page in my media journal with my musings on attention, affection, and appreciation. And bearing in mind, I've listened to this album multiple times before. This also goes for conversations. My partner was telling me about his latest music project and I loved the name of one of the tracks. It's called The Revolution is Behind a Paywall. And listen, that just spoke to my soul. So I noted it down and we had a whole conversation about his inspiration for it. It sparked an idea for an article that I'm currently writing for my Substack. And yeah, what previously would have been a brief moment, just like oh well, that's a cool track title, kind of unfolded into something a lot deeper. And in that vein, I find that I'm indulging my curiosity more and as a result becoming more curious. And lastly, it's really interesting to track what topics I'm interested in and what things keep coming up. So that's the video and a little progress report on my second experiment of the year. If you're new to my channel and you are just like lost on what I'm talking about, feel free to check out my 2026 experiment video. And if you missed the first experiment, it was all about trying to be my own algorithm, so you can check that out too. I will say we do have another experiment coming at the end of the month that is kind of a fail so far, but there's still time, so we can chat about that more then. Crafty girlies, rise up because our time has come. Now, I know many of us have been fighting off hustle and productivity culture with a stick, but today let me explain how through crafting, you've actually become the final boss and you can laugh in your tech bro boyfriend's face. Because crafting might be one of the best long-term investments you could make for your brain. So join me for experiment number 3 of 2026, trying crafting for cognitive benefits. We're going to be talking about some of the science behind how crafting activates your brain, how I tried to incorporate that into my everyday routine, and whether I actually felt any day-to-day benefits. So let's jump into it. But first, hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mia and I chat shit while I make shit. So if you like making things or just background noise while you wash your dishes, hit subscribe. And if you end up liking this video, give it a like, hype, comment for engagement. It really helps the channel and I appreciate it. So thank you. My inspiration for this experiment was a great video I stumbled across last year about the benefits that crafting has for cognition and some of the recent scientific studies in that area. That video will be linked below and you should definitely give it a watch. But essentially, crafting, especially crafts that involve both hands moving in a repetitive manner, really engages your brain, which is amazing for strengthening neural pathways and helping you build more, aka keeping your neural plasticity in good nick. Not only can this potentially help your mental health and general mood, there's research that indicates it could also help stave off cognitive decline in your later years. Now, of course, I am simply a crow girly with a microphone, and the only STEM I work in is tending my garden, and she's looking a bit sad right now. So don't take my word for it, let's pull some quotes from these smart people. The American Academy of Neurology published an article named "Can Arts, Crafts and Computer Use Preserve Your Memory?", where they shared the findings of a study done by the Mayo Clinic Study of Aging. Here's the results from that. Participants who engaged in arts in both middle and old age were 73% less likely to develop MCI, which is mild cognitive impairment, than those who did not report engaging in artistic activities. Those who crafted in middle and old age were 45% less likely to develop MCI. And even if we're not looking that far ahead, crafting makes us feel good in the moment. This is a quote from the National Geographic article, "How Knitting May Be Rewiring Your Brain brain. And besties, please bear with me because there's a lot of words where I'm like, I'm gonna give it my best shot, but I do not know if I'm pronouncing these correctly. So a 2024 study in Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience supports this outlook, demonstrating how creative endeavors activate the brain's dopaminergic reward network, particularly in areas deeply involved in pleasure, motivation, and mood. But unlike the dopamine spikes triggered by scrolling or sugar, knitting provides a slower, steadier reward. From what I've read, while any crafting is beneficial, it seems like there are distinctly different benefits you get from different learning stages. So when you're competent at a craft, you're able to access the flow state. And there's actually a really interesting article on Drexel University's news website where they did a neuroimaging study on jazz musicians while they were accessing the creative flow state. And to quote, "The findings reveal the creative flow state involves two key factors: extensive experience, which leads to a network of brain areas specialized for generating the desired type of ideas, plus the release of control, letting go, to allow this network to work with little or no conscious supervision." Whereas when you're learning a new craft, you are challenging your brain and developing new pathways, all that good stuff. A passage that sums this up perfectly is actually from that National Geographic article again. So, when you challenge the brain with unfamiliar tasks, such as learning to knit, it lights up new pathways, offering a unique neurological boost. With time and repetition, those same actions become fluent and meditative, allowing the brain to shift into a restorative flow state. This challenge to mastery arc helps maintain neural plasticity. However, you must continually reinvent the challenges for your brain as you master old ones. Now, while there is a growing amount of research into how crafting can improve emotional well-being and maybe even have long-term cognitive benefits, just bear in mind it's not conclusive right now. It's a lot of associations and correlations. But honestly, what we do know for sure right now is still enough for me to want to prioritize crafting in my everyday life. So let's get into the experiment. We are actually on round 2 of this experiment currently, so let me tell you all about my failed January run and what I'm changing moving forward. So for January, I set out with a simple goal to work on a latch hook rug project for 15 minutes a day. For the video of it all, and also because I am slowly accumulating crafts like for a specific purpose, I'm trying to make my cat a mini apartment and I want it to be like really soft and cozy for her. So I actually purchased a fresh new kit, also thinking that it would be really cool to see the full start to finish visuals for this video. Really and truly, you cannot say I'm not an optimist. If you follow me on TikTok, you will already know that I always use Craft Club Co. Crafty girls, drop your opinions, please. My current favorite brain off hobby is latch hook rug making, and I've made a rug, a handbag, a moss coaster, all using kits from Craft Club Co. But what should we make next? All the projects that are on my experiment page are from them, because I already have those kits at home. Basically, I say this to say that I highly recommend them, and as I am an affiliate of theirs, you can use the code Mia'sDigitalLife for 10% off your order if you did want to try them. But again, the point of this experiment isn't like you need to do latch hook rug making. Like, it could be any craft, so you don't need to buy a kit, but yeah, this is what I'm using. So the parameters of my January experiment were really simple. It was just do 15 minutes per day of latch hooking, reap the potential brain benefits, and report back. I only had one real research question in my Notion bank. Do I feel any different? Am I more focused, have better clarity, etc.? Okay, so here's how it went. There are only 3 notes I left during this experiment. Week 1, really enjoying this. I have found myself looking forward to my 15 minutes of silence throughout the day rather than forcing it in last minute, which is what I thought would happen. I've also found myself going back to do it untimed throughout the day as a mental reset or break. Week 2, easy to skip. I'm able to keep consistent, but not daily, especially not daily I'm out of the house. I reckon I'll just try to do it first thing in the morning. And then there's a note on the 31st of January, and all it says is, okay, well that totally flopped. Yeah, the habit side of things, I completely fell off. 15 minutes a day doesn't sound like much, and it's not, especially on days where I'm already at home, but it was the first thing to drop when I got busy. And once you miss a day, the streak is broken, okay? You might as well miss 2. However, the cognitive benefit side of things, that I would actually consider a success. Because I've done latch hooking projects before, and latch hooking is incredibly easy, it's one simple knot for the whole thing, it's a very automatic brain off activity for me, which means it's really easy to enter that creative flow state. One of the articles I referenced earlier in the video described flow as being like meditation, and while I'd never considered it that way before, I think it's true. Spending 15 minutes doing this, again, very simple, very repetitive craft, it really decluttered and focused my mind. I found myself being drawn to latch hooking for that purpose, especially on days where I was doing self-directed work. I would often dip into this project as a break just to force reboot my brain or try to feel a bit more present. So, taking these learnings, I decided I did want to continue down this path, but just revise the parameters of my experiment a little bit for the next round. So, experiment 2. Okay, so I changed a few things. The first thing I did was lengthen this experiment to 3 months and get rid of any semblance of daily practice. We are going for regular over strict timed goals. I've also expanded this experiment to include 2 types of practice to cover the different potential cognitive benefits that we mentioned before. So 1 is practicing an existing skill, i.e. latch hooking, and 2 is to challenge myself with new skills, and those are half stitch and crochet. Rather than time-based, we're going project-based. So I have an old rug kit that I'm about a quarter of the way through that I want to finish, as well as the stamp kit that you guys have seen me starting already. And for the challenge projects, I picked out a half stitch and crochet kit. And this is because while I bought the latch hook rug kits myself, Craft Club actually did gift me some kits before Christmas. So they gifted me the crochet kit, which I have not yet tried, and they also gifted me a half stitch kit, but I completely fucked that up about halfway through. I did really enjoy it, and again, the point is to challenge myself, so I am going to reattempt half stitch. And naturally, just to be clear, I'm not suggesting you go out and buy a ton of kits. If you are interested in recreating this challenge for yourself, you're likely crafty and you probably have supplies at home. So I actually made an entire video about how I make my own craft kits out of the random supplies that I find myself just accumulating, and you can check that out here for inspiration. But you could also start with 1 kit, or you could pick a craft like clay, which you don't even need a kit for, just like a box of $20 clay in your hands. This is supposed to be an inspiration jumping off point. It doesn't have to be a you need to buy X, Y, and Z, or you're going to die alone and your friends will hate you and your skin's gonna get shit and you're gonna feel depressed forever. Alright, cool, moving on. Obviously, I can't give you any conclusions for this experiment yet because, well, we've just started our second round of it. But I'm very excited to give it a crack and see how it goes, and I will check in with... Unfortunately, I fear most of us can relate to the paradoxical tyranny of the wardrobe. Because what do you mean? A, this thing, always cluttered, always overflowing. Life is a never-ending hamster wheel of laundry and putting things back in their rightful place, which is apparently not a basket of clean clothes left there for a week. Please, give me a day of rest. But B, even with this torment, I never have anything to wear. And then I create a mess pulling out loads of clothes, trying to get dressed, and see problem A again. In a world that is a high-key burning down around us, we actually don't need the additional stress of our wardrobes being like this when there are clearly more important things to think about. So let's fix it by tackling the root cause. Hi friends, welcome or welcome back to my year of experiments, where I am really and truly just throwing good shit at the wall to see what actually benefits my life and sticks. We've covered experiments in improving digital wellness and prioritizing creativity. There is a playlist if you missed those, but today's experiment is a 2-for-1 special because we are tackling overconsumption and overspending with clothes and decluttering both the physical and mental space of our wardrobes. I've personally found that tracking purchases purchases in other areas has really helped me stop spending, stop being prone to impulse purchases, and just be a lot more mindful about my consumption. So we are going to try to bring that to my wardrobe. That being said, this is not a decluttering video. I already did that one here. This experiment is about eliminating the need to declutter again in 6 months' time. I also have a ton of free printable worksheets if you would like to follow along and try this experiment out for yourself. As always, if you end up liking this video, give it a like, hype, comment for engagement. It really helps the channel and I appreciate it, so thank you. Today, we're going to be tackling the root cause of the clothing clutter problem, which is shopping. Because, and I'm saying this to me too, again, safe space, no judgment, you can declutter as much as you like, but if you're constantly shopping, you're just going to be in the same position in 3 months' time, regardless of the method of acquisition, be that thrifting, buying from ethical and sustainable brands, or even accepting hand-me-downs from friends just because it's free. It's like overfilling your glass of water, taking a few gulps, and then leaving it under a running tap is going to overflow again. This time will not be different. Overconsumption, buying too many clothes, this is the enemy, alongside the lizard people that make up the elite, of course. This is what our experiment is trying to overcome. Before I jump into it too much though, let's give Caroline Winkler her flowers. This experiment is entirely due to a video she made all about decluttering her closet, and in that video she shared that she is trying to buy only 12 pieces of clothing in a year. Naturally, that video will be linked below. So the premise of this is that the average American in 1980 only bought 12 new pieces of clothing a year, which has risen astronomically to 68 pieces per year as of 2018, with those items being worn an average of only 7 times before dying their final death in the US, and only 3 times in China, which is insane. Now, obviously, there is the fast fashion, micro trend, overconsumption of it all on a personal consumer habits level, but it's also undeniable that clothing quality just kind of sucks now. And even if you do avoid trends and try to shop slowly, you'll often find yourself needing to replace things pretty regularly. In my decluttering video, I share my process for retiring clothes, where I had 3 piles. 1, keep, clothes wearable, I'm wearing them. 2, find replacements. So these clothes have faded or shrunk or got damaged. They're still things I reach for and want to wear, or items that I need, like cold weather clothes, but the item is degraded for one reason or another. And 3, donate/gift. If they're in good condition but don't fit me or get worn, they get donated, usually straight to my best friend's wardrobe. And doing this, I realized that for the clothing I wanted to declutter, bucket 2 was the biggest. Most of my clutter was things I would still wear but couldn't because they were damaged in some way. And that's not even taking into account all the clothes in my keep pile that were already retired as pajamas. For example, shorts that shrunk immediately, t-shirts, oh my god, I have a fair few where I washed them maybe twice, and we do our washing on cold, and they just immediately looked so worn that they were retired to my pajama collection very quickly. So it's kind of a 2-pronged problem where we are actively encouraged to buy more, we see constant ads, consumption is very normalized to us, but on top of us being encouraged to buy more, the things we buy are not made to last. Meaning, for a lot of us, our wardrobes... The TLDR of this experiment is that I'm aiming to only buy 12 new pieces of clothing this year. But, taking into account all the issues that we've mentioned, what that actually means is that I need to be really intentional about my wardrobe choices, both from an actually putting outfits together perspective and from a what those clothes are made of perspective. Because if I need a cardigan, let's say, and I buy something cute and trendy, but it's made of a fabric that's itchy or that shrinks in a few months' time, well, that's one of 12 opportunities gone. One of the things that really drew me to trying this was actually when Caroline shared her clothing tracker spreadsheet. I've mentioned this lightly before, but tracking and reviewing purchases is such a game changer, especially if you're prone to impulsive spending. And I am prone to impulsively moving halfway across the world on a whim. It is not a hard sell to get me to buy a cute dress. As an example, this is my skincare tracker in my personal planner. I started tracking my skincare years ago because pre-Accutane, I really got into into the habit of impulsively trying lots of new skincare to attempt to fix my acne, which didn't work, by the way. It was just expensive and disappointing. Kind of like paying taxes, only to realize our countries are run by paedophile elites. Anyways, post Accutane, my skin type had changed completely, so I had to rebuild my routine from the ground up, and I started tracking things, mostly to see what brands, what ingredients, and what textures worked for my new face, because my skin type had entirely changed, and your girl did not have a clue how to deal with it. But what I found is that this whole process helped me to be really slow and intentional about buying things, and skincare is now one area where I am not impulsive at all. I am not trend driven. I don't have that many skincare products, and what I have I love and I've repurchased for years on end. Basically, I'm very happy with my level of consumption when it comes to skincare. I say this to say, not only are we trying to limit purchases to 12 new items, we're also trying to discover what we like and what we don't like about those items to help us make better choices in the future. Essentially, trying to build a long-lasting wardrobe that we aren't constantly having to add to and inevitably then declutter. So let's go. The first thing we want to do is take stock of our wardrobe. I've already decluttered, but I did create a little checklist if you need to get that out of the way too. Now, once we've decluttered and we're taking stock, I want you to take photos of your wardrobe. Like each item, take a flat lay picky of it. While you're doing this, if there are any items that need replacing, just note them down here in this worksheet. From there, if you want to free up some space by moving wardrobe pieces from last season into storage, now is the time. I also have a little worksheet for that. It's a handy way to get clothes that you're not able to wear at this time of year out of the way, but not forget that they exist. I am so bad for that personally. If I put all my winter stuff away, for example, best believe my brain will go, oh, winter stuff is on sale, we should stock up. We have no winter clothes. I have never seen an item of warmth in this barren household. Once we have catalogued and photographed our wardrobes, we're going to transfer them into our paper wardrobe. Personally, I did this all on Canva first because you can also just remove the background from your images. It's very quick, it's very easy, and I just printed the completed sheets rather than cutting and sticking. You can keep this completely digital if you prefer, or you can cut and stick and make it a little activity. For me, half my wardrobe is in the never-ending doom cycle of the wash, so I will be sticking additional things in at some point. And look, this step isn't essential, but I do find it helpful because my brain's innate ability to remember things exist is nada. I did create sheets for seasonal wardrobes if you want to break it down like that, but personally I live in Melbourne where the weather is temperamental to say the least, so outside of real heavy duty items, I rarely put my winter wardrobe entirely away because listen, it can be 35 degrees here, middle of summer, the next day you're going to need a raincoat. Remember how part of the mindful shopping is thinking about how pieces fit into our wider wardrobe? That's where these sheets come into play. I've created a few different templates you can use or not use, it's really up to you. But they're designed to be a way for you to visualize a new item next to all the things that you already own. For one-off things like dresses, this probably isn't necessary, but for the fun patterned pants, may be useful to check they match literally anything else in your wardrobe first. This is twofold. First, we have an overall tracker that lets you see items at a glance along with cost. I know, I'm sorry, I just could see a world where this experiment could lead to crazy overspending, where buying less turns into a justification to spend more on each thing, so cost needs to be considered too. And then we have a space for each individual item where you can note down the brand, the size, the material, and your thoughts. I don't personally know a lot about clothing materials if I'm honest, but I have been Googling before purchasing, and that's turned me off quite a few things. I also made an effort to go through my wardrobe and find items I really like or don't, to look at their material labels and give myself a bit of a base. As an example, I know that I prefer 100% cotton t-shirts, and that hemp appeals because of the sustainability side, but it wears out super quick and I don't tend to love it long term. Again, all these printables are available for free if you want to try this yourself. Check out the description box for that. So far, I'm loving this. It's making me so much more discerning of my purchases, and it has discouraged me from making purchases multiple times already. That said, I've made 2 purchases already this year, a jacket and a dress. When I initially filmed this video, the jacket hadn't arrived, but I just got a text saying it's been delivered today. So when it gets here, I'll film a little segment with my thoughts and add it in. And my second purchase is a day dress. So the length and fit of this one is perfection. She would definitely get her wear. Overall, the dress just feels like great quality. Would definitely buy from this brand again. Okay, so through doing this for a few months now, I have a few tips to share, and I can kind of condense them into this one worksheet that I went back and made later, and you can reference it before you buy new things. So tip 1, keep track of items you need. This has saved me from the snare of a sale a few times. Basically, while you're living your life or getting dressed, keep note of what items you need. So for me, I know that I need loose-ish long-line tees. I have a fair few fitted crop tees, especially ones that have slowly shrunk over time, and I don't love that fit. Okay, your girl is 27 now. I've had my time. Okay, the crop t-shirts have had their time in my wardrobe. I'm moving on. Like with my dresses, I like shape but not typically bodycon, and yeah, that's something I found myself thinking many times recently. I wish this top was a bit baggier, or I wish this top was a bit longer. So that's a note for me. I do not want any more crop tees, regardless of how cute they are. Even if my favorite brand is doing a 50% site-wide sale, girl, close the cart. Tip 2, keep track of things you like and dislike, i.e. brands, materials, fits. So this section is freeform and you can just quickly jot down things as you come across them. Essentially, it's like buying notes for future you. For example, like I said a bit earlier, 100% cotton t-shirts are a yes from me. I love the brand Offense for their sustainability and designs, but their t-shirts wear out very quickly and I should probably avoid them. That being said, other items like jeans, play suits, dresses, etc. from them are brilliant and have lasted many years in my closet. Gander, weirdly enough, is a bit teenish. If you don't know what Gander is, it's like a high street kind of brand, and yeah, it's a bit teenish in the branding, but surprisingly I really stand by their quality. I've bought a few things from them over the years because they're so affordable, so if you need something in a rush and you're like on holiday, it's easy to just pop in and buy something, and they've all outlasted many other items in my wardrobe. Which leads me to tip 3, bear in mind the quality of clothing and the price of clothing are not always correlated. Like I said earlier, I can definitely see how this challenge could lead to overspending if you end up in the mindset of spending more per item because you're buying less. And listen, I'm definitely not against spending more in favor of quality. In fact, I'm pro that. But sometimes that's actually just not applicable. I've genuinely found some cheaper shops, I mentioned Gander before, where the clothes lasted way longer than higher end alternatives. So if you do want to spend more on an item to get better quality, just do a little bit of research first. Trawl the Reddit forums, Google the material breakdown. Just make sure that the extra you are paying for is worth it. And those are my tips. I found that when I get tempted by a juicy sale section, reviewing potential purchases against those criteria, as well as just checking how they fit in my wider wardrobe, has really quelled that impulse. There have been carts that have been left abandoned. So I think this experiment is doing what it's meant to, and it's working so far. Okay, my friends, we shall end at the end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you're subscribed. Thank you to my channel members. If you are a channel member, by the way, just remember, grab your monthly journal pack printable that went up this weekend. And as always, thank you to everyone for hanging out with me. Okay, bye.